Hey New Tech, how you doing? Let's get started with Unity. So to do this tutorial, you have to go to the week 9 Canvas site and download the Japanese music app example and put it in a folder where you want all of your Unity projects to be. Now this can be in a different place on your computer depending on just choose a folder where your Unity projects are going to be. See, I've got a couple in there on this machine already. And then uncompress the zip file. And then open your Unity app. And when you first open up Unity, it will run this program called the Unity Hub, which is kind of like a file management system. And you won't be able to see your project yet until we add it into this projects collection here. So we go here to add. And we click on the folder here and not on anything inside. We actually click just on the folder. And then press open. Now before I do that, you'll see in this folder there's a whole bunch of files. Some of them have the name of the app. Well, it's actually the name of the folder. And then they have all these different appendices on the end. Like this one's got a CS project. This one's got an SLN. And these are really important that you don't mess with these. So halfway through your project, don't change the name of the folder because your project might likely not open. And then once you've added it, click on it, and then Unity will open it up. And you should get something that looks like this. Now you might have used Unity before. I suggest at this stage, one of the best ways to set up Unity is to go to the layout and click on 2x3. And that gives you this kind of look where you have the scene window up here, the game window underneath it, and then these columns for hierarchy and project. And you can see there's, if I click in here, where it says Music App, you can see in our hierarchy we've already got some things in there. And in our project, we've already got a whole bunch of kind of folders set up. Some of those I've set up. And when you open a generic Unity program, there'll be other things in there. And then when we click on any one of these folders, the next column along here will show you the contents. And you can see I've put some audio loops in there. And I've put some graphical assets in there. There's a couple of scripts in there. And I've put some special kinds of graphics. They're called sprites in Unity. So we're kind of ready to go. So what is Unity about? It's similar to Max in many respects. It generates code, and you can use it to make programs. Where Unity deviates from Max. Start with, if you go up here to File and go to Build Settings, you'll see that Unity allows us to build all sorts of different apps here, depending on what you've installed on your computer. So we can build an app for PC, Mac, or Linux. We can also build an Android or WebGL app. And I haven't installed all the other things, but I could build this app for PlayStation or Xbox. And there's some versions of Linux that I can build to as well to run things natively on a Raspberry Pi, which makes it a really powerful bit of software, because whatever you create in it can then be what we call ported to different application platforms, which is why it's so enormously popular at the moment, and there are so many people using it and making money from it. So we have a window here that's called the scene. And inside the scene window, we organize our objects the way they look and appear in this Unity world. Is very different to Max. Max is quite abstract, where we lay out a code as a flow of operations. In Unity, we organize code in a 3D world as spatial and temporal events. And so if you understand that this development platform has been made by gamers originally who wanted to make computer games, it's a good way to understand how it works. So this is an editing window where we put things. And what we're going to do first is hit this little button up here to turn it into a two-dimensional world. And then we're going to put our first programming object in there. So just like Max has objects, Unity has the same thing. It calls them game objects though. So if we go up to this game object window, you can see that it organizes them very differently, and at first glance it looks a lot simpler than Max. And what I want to do is I want to grab a user interface object first that we're going to build our app into. And if you scroll down and find the canvas, and then the next thing I'd like you to do is go to this game window and let's set it up for a device. And I'm going to set it up for an iPhone 10 or maybe an iPhone XR in portrait, or maybe an iPad mini. It doesn't really matter. And, you know, it may well be that you want to develop for Android. And if that's the case, go back to Build Settings and just click this here and then press Switch Platform. And you'll be ready to develop for Android. I'm going to develop for iOS, so I'm going to click this. But if you're not interested in developing for a phone specifically yet, you can also click on the WebGL and switch platform to that. That's quite okay, because our submission this semester will be done for a web platform. But I'm going to keep mine on iOS for now. Whatever you do, it will populate this part of your window with all of the possible devices. So if you switch to Android now, you'll see Galaxy phones and all of those things. And if you switch to a web GL, just we will put in our own custom one down here. If you hit this little plus sign, and you can put in your resolution, your width and height there. So you could say 2048 by 1536. And you'll be developing for that pixel resolution. And you'll see it'll be confirmed up here. Now, I think I've already had a canvas in here, so I'm very sorry about that. Let's just delete that. We just need one canvas. And let's just double click on that. Now that I've got my screen in the right size, if I double click on that, that should center it in my scene. And what I want to do is I want to add some functionality to this. So in Unity, we have a very important window over here, the inspector window. And it's on the right-hand side, just like programming in Max. But unlike Max, where we start with an object and we add other ones below it, in Unity, we put an object on a screen and then we modify it by adding other features to it, and not in the form of other objects, but we call these things components. And you can see that there's already a whole bunch of components that are connected to this object called a canvas. There's a thing called a transform, which allows us to scale it up and down and do various things to it. And there's also a raycaster, which allows us to interact with it. But what I want to do is I want to add a background image in here. So while keeping the canvas selected in my hierarchy, I'm going to add a component. And it's under the component menu, not the game object menu. And what I want to do is add this one called a raw image. And if you've done that successfully, you'll see that underneath this part of the canvas, there's another component there called a raw image. And there's nothing in there yet. It says texture. And what I want to do here is now go to my project, go to my assets, where it says graphics. There's a background image here, and I want to drag that down where it says texture. Now, I've spent hardly any time making these assets because I don't want you to use them. I want you to make your own. And I'm going to work on developing an app as well for this brief. And I can tell you now, it's not going to look like that. It's going to be much higher finish. But you can see there that, we've got a background image in. And now I want to add a user interface onto that. First thing I want to do is make one of those big taiko drums. So we can do a one-shot sound sampler. So clicking on the canvas again, I'm going to nest another object inside the canvas. And what that's going to do is locate it within the space of the canvas. Now I could create another object outside the canvas, but then it could be anywhere in this 2D space. And it may not line up exactly where I want it to line up. And so this is a really common concept in Unity, where we make another object a child of a parent object, in this case the canvas. So we go to UI game object, and we grab this one called a button. And you can see it's pretty small. We can double click and zoom right in on it. And it's selected at the moment. And if we have a look inside this button object, it has another component built into it that lets us write text. But I'm not going to use that, so I can click it and make it disappear like that. I can keep it in there, might use it later. Or I can go to the hierarchy, click on it, right click and delete. Then when I select the button, you'll see that it also has a source image here where we can put a graphic in. And it's looking for a user interface sprite format image. So click on your sprite folder and grab this taiko drum sprite and drag it in. And you'll see at the moment that it's all the wrong shape and everything like that. If I go up to its rectangular transform now, I can fix up its width and height up here. And I might make it 350 by 350. And if I use my scroll wheel, I can zoom out. I can grab my hand tool up here and move the canvas around. I can also use this resizing tool and resize the button this way. Or I can put these values in and make sure the scaling is on 1. This tool here, the arrows will let you move things around. But I might want it a bit bigger than that. Let's say 400 by 400 maybe. That's good. Now, next, I'm going to create an audio source that's going to, it's another kind of game object that's going to hold a sound in it and play a sound. And what I want to do is I want to nest a whole bunch of audio sources together in this space. And to do that, I'm going to do something. It may not make much sense to you, but if I click here, I'm going to create an empty game object. And this actually has no function at all in my program, just an organizational function, because I'm going to make a whole lot of children that live in this game object. And I'm going to rename it Audio Objects. And I'm going to rename my canvas to main panel. And I'm going to rename my button to Taiko Drum. And I'm going to give it a descriptive name, low. Now in my audio objects folder, I'm going to create another game object just for holding a sample and playing it. And if I go to game object here to audio, you can see there's an object called audio source. And I better just make sure it's in there. So I clicked and dragged it onto the audio objects empty. So I can close that now and you can see it's gone and you can see the child is there. Now I'm going to call this Taiko Drum Low Audio Source. And in there's in the inspector, a place for you to drag an audio clip. So if I go to my audio now, you'll see that I've got a couple of sounds in here. There's one there, which I should be able to play. Why won't it play it? Okay, well, anyway, they're in there. I can see that they're there. Maybe I've got to turn the volume up somewhere. Okay, well, they're not loops, these, right? So grab this Taiko Drum 1. Go back to your audio source, make sure that's selected. Take this Taiko Drum here and paste it in there. And you can see that there's a few options here on the audio source. There's this one called Play on Awake, and I want you to tick that off. So we shouldn't have any of these boxes ticked. It should be on volume 1. And now what we've got to do is connect it up to the button object here. So if I look up the top of Unity, there's a play button, a pause button, and these are what we use for play testing our app. And when we put it in play mode, we can run the interaction, and you can see there I'm clicking on the button, nothing's happening. Now, I haven't taught you much about the play button yet because first thing we've got to do is learn to save. And then the next thing that you've got to understand is that when you're in play mode, whatever you're doing, programming or making changes or whatever, they don't get saved, which is kind of, at first, can be really annoying and really disastrous. So just keep checking to make sure that that play button is off. And what I do before I get any further is I go up to the preferences in Unity. There's a whole bunch of things you can set up here. But if you go to where it says colors, there's this thing called play mode tint. And just click in that color band next to it and make it something, you know, make it something like bright green, or and then close that window. And now when you press play, your window goes green and it reminds you, or goes whatever that color is, and it reminds you that you're in play mode. And whatever you do in this mode, you won't be able to save. And then press save. So here's the tricky thing about Unity. What we've got to do is work out how this button connects to the sound. And down here in the button, there's a visual window here to organize the interaction. And there's an interaction here. It says on click. And just go to that little plus sign and click on it. And you'll get this little box will be filled out with stuff. So once again, I'm selected the button, not the audio source, the button. And inside the buttons inspector, there's the button kind of interface. And its functionality is represented by this little window here. And it says on click, when you click the button, what do you do? Well, at the moment, it's got a little window here, which is really cool. And we can grab the taiko drum audio source now. This is the game object that makes sound. And I'm going to click on that and I'm going to drag it down and put it in that window. And by doing that, I've tied the interaction of this graphical button object to the other game object. It's a bit like connecting two objects together with a patch cord in Max. And now that they're connected, nothing is going to happen. We've still got to find now a function that will relate to the audio source. And if we click on this function window, you can see that there's a whole bunch of scripts actually that are built into Unity. And in the audio source, there's a whole bunch of what we call functions in scripting. And they're represented here in a nice kind of introductory way without you having to do any programming. And if you go to play, and then let's test it out. You'll hear it play through. Now there is another script there called play one shot. We could try that as well. Not sure if that's going to work. No, I'm missing an argument. I'll have to. Yeah, I don't think we should use that one. Just go play. That's great. And you know, if you don't like that sound, you can grab another one of these taiko drum sounds and put them in there. Into the audio source, that is. So if that sound is no good, try this one. And that's how we do a simple button interaction. So now, before we proceed with the next tutorial, see if you can do this. I'm going to grab the taiko drum button and I'm going to press duplicate. And I'm going to modify the name of this. And then I'm going to grab this and duplicate this. And I'm going to change the name correspond. And I'm going to make this one a little bit higher by clicking on this pitch slider and moving it up. And I'm going to go to this button and make sure this new audio source is connected and set the same function up for play. Now, if I look over here on the scene window, you might be saying, well, hang on, what happened to our button? But, you know, it's pasted out. It's just immediately over the top. So see if you can do that. And don't forget to play test.